Welcome at this special series of Botcasters about conversational and generative AI in customer contact centers. Today with Stuart McCann. Welcome, Stuart.
Hi, Duran. Great to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. Please introduce yourself, besides your name, of course.
Yeah, so I've been in the contact center industry 18 years now, since I was 17 years old. Started out in insurance, did some time in airlines, spent some time in Abu Dhabi, in Serbia, in Belgrade, and then moved into the implementation technology side of the world and into a software vendor. And then I've been with BCG now for the last 5 years, helping clients think about large scale customer service transformation programs across the globe.
And that's exactly why you're here, because you see a lot of things go right and, of course, go wrong as well. And I'm really curious. What do you see appearing in the strategies or the implementation plans for customer contact centers with regard to AI, generative AI, the use of those technologies, conversational AI?
Yeah, what we see at the moment, for the last 18 years, we've been regarded as a cost center, a huge cost center, and a lot of conversations with executives have always focused on reducing the cost, and as a second order, maybe slightly improving the experience, but really thinking about why it was such a large cost burden. And with this next wave of generative AI and the automation potential that's available at the moment, a lot of the conversations now change from why is it a cost center to what value can we drive out of our engagement with customers. And there's such a huge opportunity to improve the automation. What will we do with this resource? How will we actually change the nature of what we think about the contact center as? What does that new role mean? And yes, there's great cost saving potential with AI, but what can we then do with this with the resources that this generates? Can we do more proactive service? Can we sell more? Can we win back more? Can we retain more? Everyone's viewing this as a big opportunity now to stop thinking about the cost center and start thinking about, with the augmentation of these features, where do we get value? How do we get value from these very large customer service organizations?
But that's a huge paradigm shift.
Yeah, and many aren't ready. Many start the conversation with us around, the simple stuff. So how can I reduce average handling time? Make the call shorter, make it punch in. Customers like it shorter, businesses like it being shorter. It's cheaper to do each interaction. But then when you start to unpack, okay, well, what was the conversation actually about? Was there revenue opportunities in that conversation? Were there ways to drive up the interaction so that the customer has a higher lifetime value? Were there opportunities to win back? We've got spare resource now. Can we go and proactively go and win back customers or retain customers? Yeah, we start very much with people who are a little bit abstracted from the call center and the executive suite, thinking, how do I get that 20% cost saving achieved? And then the conversation rapidly moves on to, actually, with that cost saving, what do I do? How do I rethink the role of the contact center?
And how do C-level executives respond or react, actually, if they hear the cost of practicing or playing around with Gen AI and implementing it in a responsible and nowadays almost we have to say legal fashion if you talk about the European AI Act? How do they respond when they understand they need to give off multi-year budgeting for the project, invest in people, a lot of people? How do they respond that they first need to spend money, a lot of money, before they get those savings and extra sales?
Yeah, and it's not helped, that many in the market pitch quick wins. So we'll talk about, for instance, summarizing the call. So every call has some after call work, where the agent spends a little bit of time writing the notes and puts those into the CRM. Now, obviously, with generative AI, the transcript can be summarized very quickly, and that can be inserted into the CRM. And it almost becomes, oh well, this is such a quick win. We can throw it in. We don't need to do any fine tuning. We don't need to think about what's the risk around this. It's just a very nice, easy, simple thing. And there's lots of these pilots going on. I mean, most call center customer service leaders I speak to have one or two of these pilots going on. And these pilots are really cool and get a lot of traction very quickly. Um, but you can't scale them. You can't get them to do the things you want to do next. So, what were the three actions that the agent spoke about in the call? How do I call those core systems? I mean, take a broadband example. The broadband was out, and the agent had to go and do 6 different systems, copy and paste between 10 different systems, and then had to ring the customer back to actually solve the broadband issue. But really, that 20 seconds we saved in just, summarizing the transcript at the end of the call isn't doing anything valuable. It's, very, very minor AHT savings. The real value comes, right? How do I get the data in the right place? How do I get the integration so that the AI could call the broadband line checker, check the billing status of the account? How do I get all that thing? And then how can I fine tune? Because the language used in broadband conversations is very different from the language used in banking conversations. And so then becomes the real challenge. You've got your little pilot and it's delivering some value, but when you start to dig in, I need to fine tune the language this model is using. I need to think about optimizing where I do these things and where the data sits for them. And there's a lot of deep technical work that's got to be done to actually then even be able to get it to scale into anything useful. And it's a really difficult challenge, and one that involves, like you said, multi-year investment cycles. Thinking about 3-year transformation programs that are capital intensive, with system integrators being involved, rebuying vendors. So a lot of these call centers have on-premise telephony solutions today, and they're thinking about migrating to a cloud CCaaS provider, but they haven't really done it. And then now they have to really question all these decision points in the past. There's a lot of process legacy, there's a lot of role legacy, and they've got to really, take a big step back and actually just rethink the whole strategy. And that's where we try to help expedite that process.
It must be really difficult because as a company, if you have on-premise solutions where you see all the suppliers, all the vendors moving to SaaS solutions, where from a risk perspective, also with AI, you introduce an unprecedented risk where stuff goes and data leaks, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think companies truly understand the inherent risk of not doing things right. How do you view this whole trend, or it's not a trend, it's reality? Everything and everybody moving to the cloud, and at the same time, also the providers like the big four tech companies, AWS, Azure, Meta, not Meta,
GCP, Google from
yeah,
Oracle.
Alphabet,
Yeah, Alphabet.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're all pushing to go to the cloud. And they're all introducing AI in the cloud. And it's like I don't know if you read the book by Nir Eyal, Hooked. They're sort of getting them hooked on that model because it seems to work flawless. It also introduces a lot of risk and opportunities, but basically also what you do is you hand over the full operational risk of if something goes wrong. I will stay decent, but you're in deep trouble if you have no internet connection or you just don't operate. And that's something
Mm.
you can't explain to customers. How do you view in this whole scheme of things, the push and move towards the cloud? And Gen AI and conversational is pushing that even harder. It's the same players though. And it's their earnings model. So somewhere down the line you might have put in or somebody might have put in a great project, great earnings. They save staff, and at some point Azure or another company, it doesn't matter. It's not about Azure. Has this little knob called price. It say everything got more expensive. Let's turn the knob. Let's turn the knob, and then you could have a really efficient operation. But if your supplier starts turning the knob, then what do you do?
Yeah, and we see that a lot with multi-cloud strategy now, where people think by basing on 2 clouds, you may mitigate some of that risk. But we saw in Australia an entire instance of a cloud account deleted, right, and the entire business was removed.
And that was
Um,
a mistake, I hope.
a mistake, yeah, yeah, which that was recovered. But I think I'm really bullish on the power of local inference. I think people capitalize their call centers over sort of 10-year cycles. So you bought the old Avaya or Cisco or Aspect solution, and you literally, ran it until the thing needed to
The
be.
wires come out.
Yeah, and look, there was a lot of great projects, and when we did net present value, 15 years ago, and thought about depreciating assets, and this move to full OpEx, and the whole thing just being constantly recurring monthly bill from a vendor, requires a big mind shift, and there are great benefits for it. It's always up to date. There's always new features coming in. There's always things you can do more on those solutions, and there's always optimizations. There's also a lot of bad patterns, so people misconfigure these things and run up very extreme bills. And lots of conversations with clients who've learned the mistakes of maybe thinking duplicating the ingress and egress of the data was a great idea, and they learned that there's an awful lot of fees in bandwidth consumption in the cloud. I think if you think about what the call center does, especially with voice, the need for it to be so low latency so quickly, I think there's a lot of power in the local model. And we're seeing this now. So with the Apple devices, with the NLP on device, Google just announced that within the Chromium browser now you'll be able to run LLMs locally within the browser. Um, if you're gonna bring AI to an agent who's doing voice in real time, that transcription and that querying needs to be in the sub 100 millisecond latency era. Now I know we saw sort of the GPT-4o demo, right, where it's super low, we're still over 200 milliseconds latency, but we're getting close to that with some of it. But some of these things that you want to do, like transcription, like retrieval augmented generation, where you want to go and get a knowledge article and just bring it in front of the agent really quickly, there's a lot of power to building these things locally. And for voice, it's going to be, I think, super important. I saw a demo the other day of speech to speech transcription where the agent was speaking in English and the customer was speaking in Spanish, and the model that was running on the agent side was doing this all locally. And in such a
Wow.
way that the agent was speaking and the customer was hearing Spanish. And you just can't do that with the cloud latency. Even if you got it to the cloud on time, transcribed it on time, got it over to the customer, there would be like this unnatural pause in the conversation while you were waiting for this back and forth. So we're in the early innings of AI, and I think the development of these open source models, Meta, really pushing out there with the Llama 3 model. Um, there's going to be a lot of power from the open source community, and I think a lot of the things that we're going to build on are going to be open source from the start. And I think that gives the enterprise organization a lot of power, because there isn't then the need to just rely on what's available in your big cloud vendor. You can do things locally. You can think about, where is the right place to do this work? Do I need to pay for a consumption model on everything, or can I capitalize some of it? I had a conversation with a CCAS vendor, and he was talking about buying a fleet of GPUs because he wanted not to pay the hyperscalers. He wanted to have his own, inference. And I think these questions will come up in the next 5 years, right? There's going to be a huge plethora of compute available, maybe, hopefully not, but maybe too much compute available, so the prices will come down, and people will start to think about, where's the right place to put these models. Some of these will be local, some of these will be cloud. And I think for the call center, the great thing, and this is why so many people are excited about the opportunity in the call center with AI, is there's just so many use cases you can go after, from summarization of call, the simplest one, right the way through to, how do I put a conversational bot on the IVR? How do I think about things like telling the agent what the right knowledge article is, what sentiment of the customer? How do I give the manager a dashboard of all the different core reasons and what's driving them and where the problems are in the business? There's so much obvious potential in the call center that I think we'll, for the next 5 years, be spending tons of time building out pilots and use cases, MVPs, and then we can start to answer some of these questions like, does it all need to sit in the cloud? Does it all need to be in the right spot for me? And yeah, as you say, there's big trade-offs to be made as people go forward on these things.
So if I translate this correctly, whether you should be in the cloud with all of your computing necessities, or go to basically a hybrid situation, it sounds like what you're saying is, and you're the consultant,
Hmm.
that it needs to be on the strategic agenda, where the right questions need to be asked in the boardroom from where are we heading, and do we need to keep some computing resources power locally in order to do whatever we need to do. And that's an interesting thought, because recently, this weekend, in Holland, they had a disturbance in the electronic payment system, so that all the shops use. And interesting enough, in the old days when a bank couldn't make a bank transfer, it wouldn't be on the news. And now it's like within seconds, it's on the news that there's a huge disturbance in the services. People angry in the stores because nobody carries cash anymore, and it's like everybody's hooked on this. Of course, the government pushed it, but hooked on this system of electronic payments. And if something goes south, there is no redundancy. If the system goes down, the system goes down. There are machines that are redundant, but if it fails, then the failure is also in the other thing.
And this is a
Uh,
lot of the conversations where people start to think about the migration to a cloud communication system, a CCaaS player. A lot of them are, starting from that point. I'm the backstop for my entire business. If my website is down, my app is down, and everything else is down, the only thing that I need is my call center to be up, because then that's my last chance saloon of customer support. Is all things end in the call center. And so they want that real, beyond five nines, 99.9999. They want beyond that. They want a surety that they can reach their customers and speak to their customers at any moment. I mean, we do see some emergency services in the UK. Some emergency services have actually put their 999 or the 991 sort of systems on cloud vendors, but the super redundancy. This is not talking about even down to the network layer, below the network layer. All the layers are super redundant because these critical infrastructure requires such a high level of surety that it's going to work. And I think a lot of our clients who worry about moving to a CCaaS solution ask us these questions a lot, which is, am I assured that I'm always going to be on, always going to be available? Because if everything else is off, the last thing that people want is they have to be able to ring a phone number and speak to me. I am the backstop for the company.
Yeah, and then I can imagine that in such a case that you say, okay, if we have a hybrid solution, we have some form of control if everything goes out, that we are able to manage some of the software ourselves or on premise or something like that. But if you zoom out of this, and you look at it, um, and companies are, okay, let's put everything in the cloud. As a customer contact center, everything is data, customer data, right?
Yes, 100%.
And um, um, are there a lot of companies looking at Gen AI worried that if they start using that and around all their data, which is basically if they have a leak, they have another problem, that is actually turning into high risk? Um, and then they sort of are lost for what to do, because there's no right answer yet. There's a lot happening, but
Yeah.
the ideal solution is not there yet.
Yeah, we hear this a lot. We've done some work around sort of tokenization of the work in encryption. So you can actually work with an LLM without the LLM seeing the data. It can be tokenized and encrypted in a way that essentially the LLM itself can't pass the information. So there is some work happening there to try and think about preventing the LLM seeing the actual raw information. I think there's a great opportunity with the local inference to have models that you control and that you fine tune to your business requirements. And I think we'll see all the CCaaS and CRM players start to offer this sort of um, what you might call an AI studio, where you sort of build your own specific way of using these technologies. I think that's where you can get into some of the real value. If I want to build a sort of retention set of use cases, I want to have conversations that are around why to retain a customer, how to retain a customer. I'm going to fine tune that really bespokely to what my pricing is, where my data is, what customer data I want to use in that situation. And I think there's a great opportunity now as people start to think about what data they need and map where all that data sits, and often in lots of silos. I talked about the broadband example, the agent having to copy and paste between 20 different applications. We've in the big enterprises, we've allowed this legacy to accumulate for many years, and all this data sits in all these different silos, and therefore we can't just throw AI on top because all the data is sat in disparate systems. And so when we now think about, okay, we would love to be able to connect all this stuff together and do something useful with it. This is a great opportunity to step back and say, where do I want to reside my data, and what do I want to use my data for, and what's important, what's sacrosanct and I can't give to the cloud, what should I encrypt and where, and how should I then deploy these different things for the actual value of delivering service to your customer.
Yeah, but that 5-year budget needs to be upped a little bit if I hear this, because these are expensive operations.
Yes, and I think there's some good short-term savings available. What we find is that clients have built very bespoke processes that are very difficult to migrate. So you may have built an inbound customer support journey because of the constraints of the prior technology, and actually stepping back to them and saying, what is it, the outcome we're trying to achieve here? What is the problem, the job to be done that we're trying to solve? And often you can unpeel that quite a few layers, and when you get back to what it is that the business is trying to do, the actual legacy way of doing this was probably not required, and there's a lot more flexibility available today, and you can start to rethink those business processes in a way that allows much more simplified journeys. If you think about I'd like to renew my broadband contract, the email with the one-click button with the magic link to sign in and let you accept the contract renewal. The journey is so simple. And in the old world, we got letters and you got chased and you got we really have an opportunity now, especially if you're going to embark on a 3-year big transformation program, to say the technology is cool, but the most of the work is around, what is my org structure? What are the people I need? What are the right roles I need to hire? What are the right processes I need to do? We talk about it in BCG in what we call the 20%, the 10%, the 70%. The 20% is a technology. The 10% is the algorithms. That's just 30% of what you need to do. 70% of the work really is, what is my org structure? What are the processes I need to invoke? What are the different roles? What are the different leadership things I need to do? What's my delivery model? What do I use my outsourcers for? What do I use my in-house resource for? What technical knowledge do I need in-house? What do I need from system integrators? Really rethinking all these questions means you can dramatically speed up the way these programs run, and improve the chances of success. So you mentioned the likelihood of failure before. I mean, most transformation programs fail. I mean, it's very common for a transformation program to be 4 years late, double the budget, and when you step back and understand what happened, is people got very excited about the potential of the technology, but never thought about the other questions. It was like, let's pilot some technology, and then we'll think about all the work that needs to be done to make it real afterwards. And we would like to flip that formula around.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. I'd like to. There's another angle on that, in my opinion, because sometimes you don't know everything, right? If it's new, we have no idea. So sometimes you need to just experiment the hell out of something new to understand what it is and what you can do with it, and then you can strategize and ask all those difficult questions. But there's this phase before where you have, I'll call it a playground or something, where an innovation team can play around with new technology. And if you look at what you're saying, and by the way, if you say it's 4 years late, then basically you're implementing old technology.
Yes.
By the time you're there, you can restart the next
playground was no longer a playground anymore. Yes,
exactly. If you look at everything that's happening, what do you think this is going to do? There's a whole hype about all these reports saying, "Oh, so many people are going to lose their job," blah 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 blah. What's your take on that? And I'm assuming, and that's maybe a wrong assumption, but you can correct me. I'm assuming that the companies that want to play around with this, their first idea is when they understand the cost and the impact on the amount of work that needs to be done. Their first reaction is not, we want to kick out a lot of people. We want to get ready for a future where we want to do more with the same amount of people, or if people leave, we don't have to replace them, but we don't want to fire anyone, right? We want to contain that knowledge because the system might not work and we need people who understand.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of if we take the step back to the broader technology trends, every new technology has added people to the workforce, not taken people away, you know. So
thank you. Thank you.
Now this round could be different, but I think there's early signs that it's not that different. We find new work types that were not done previously for these people to be done. Talk about proactive and outbound communications. Most call centers I've worked in have been capacity constrained. They've had wall boards. I don't know if you've been in a call center, but they've these big wall boards that are red with calls in queue, and there's often, you know, the call that's been in the queue for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and it's because they're capacity constrained. They haven't got enough resource to do the actual work that they've already got today. So we can make them a little bit more efficient. We can find productivity gains. We can find ways to make them better at their role. Then we get to a baseline of now you can answer those calls in a reasonable period of time. But actually, you know, we will find new work for these people to go after. So there is opportunity here. You know, in the next 3 years, if I think about most client business cases, they're thinking like, you know, 20-30% opportunity. But what we tend to find is when you get those savings, you do more with the same people. So think about your water company or your electricity company today. Where do you find their phone number? Well, often you probably Google, and it's not available on Google. You go to their website and they make you go through 10 different layers of forms to get to a human being. And the reason we put all those barriers in the way in the call center is because there was so much demand, and all that demand was so high that we couldn't handle the actual real demand. Now, what this may allow us to do is take away some of those gates. You know, we may have previously wanted to hide the phone number because there was just so much demand that we didn't want to handle. Maybe we bring that 2 or 3 clicks earlier in the journey now because we have the capacity to handle those contacts. And, you know, a lot of those conversations that we didn't want to have in the past because we were budget limited on the number of people we had, we can now afford to have those conversations. The other part to that is when you add chat or you add WhatsApp or you add Messenger, we find it accretive. We find more demand. So the people who thought that they'd remove some of the demand through automation, as soon as they add a new channel, they find this whole additional pool of demand where the customer wanted to have a conversation with the brand, but they weren't able to have a conversation because it was just so difficult to get hold of the brand. And so you think about the retailer example. You know, if I had a returns, I did a parcel return. Once I've opened that WhatsApp channel, I've now got a permanent connection with that brand. I'm going to start asking more questions. I'm going to start bringing more demand types in. I might ask you what your opening hours are, and you can handle that with a bot. But I might ask really difficult questions that you can't answer with a bot. And so, you know, while AI will definitely help in this regard, if we just lowered the barrier to entry to the call center a little bit, I think we'd find so much additional demand that we'd need all the people we've already got. So there's a lot of work to be done to actually, you know, make meaningful cost savings.
So basically, the AI or Gen AI will be like a digital coworker, supporting on the one hand supporting them, on the other hand helping customers flawlessly where they can. This sort of brings up another thing, and it's an example, and I can't grasp it, but you know telco, so maybe you can answer this. You see all these mobile telephone operators, right? We're not about brands, so it doesn't matter. And all these private people have a subscription, and that expires after a year or 2 years. Usually that's the maximum. And then they send you an email to renew it, or they randomly or seldomly call because it's too expensive compared to what they make on the thing. I had this is already one of my first podcasts. I had a telco, and I asked them the question. I literally don't understand. You have everybody's phone number, right?
Yeah.
You have access to WhatsApp or Telegram. It's easy for you to check which one they use. You build a chatbot where you know someone's usage. You use an API with a calculator to compare all offerings on the market, and you see where you stand compared to their usage. And if you gave them the best offer you could give them, and you just go on, offer them €1 a month under lower, or half a euro, or the same as the lowest offering. And they only have to say yes in the chat because you know who they are. You got it all covered. Legally, that's fine. I do not understand. They can do this at scale. This is a perfectly scalable application. They just won't do it. And what happens is people call, etc. But you would make me extremely happy. Oh, I scanned the market. Here are the results. These are from yesterday. And by the way, if you stay with us, you get a, how do you say that? A loyalty, loyalty discount or whatever, because we want you to stay. We value your business, blah, 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 blah. So your new monthly fee will be that. Do you agree? Which is lower than you're currently paying. Yes, because the cost of getting a new customer is much higher.
Much higher, yeah. And this is where AI has a very powerful place to be. Recommender systems, or using large data to then decide who you reach out to and how you reach out to, is a really simple challenge, but it's one that drives a lot of value and lifetime value.
Just take all the customers that
you've got
are never late with their payment.
Yes,
never. You just say, reward them for that.
And this is where we are seeing globally some telcos, India being a good example, Brazil being a good example, where they're using those asynchronous channels like Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, iMessage, and they're starting to pilot some of those things. So if you do look at the Brazilian and Indian market, they're a little bit ahead of the Western markets in doing this. And I think there's probably two reasons why historically. One is that the cost of doing this in a European setting is quite high. So, as you said, you didn't want humans doing this work because the margin on the product was too small. But now with being able to sort by who is the highest propensity to renew, you can work out who is most likely to renew, and also being able to use those cheaper channels like the asynchronous channels. And even still have a conversation. Maybe 5-10% of these customers do want to have a conversation around renewal, but 90% just want to press yes and or say no because they've got another idea. This is the one of the early use cases we're seeing for redeployment of labour is let me get them into different channels. I mean, one of the more bold and more exciting ones we saw was IKEA. What IKEA said was, as we save resource, as we actually get people in the call center to stop doing the "Where's my order?" What if we did kitchen sales remotely? What would that look like? What would a 20-30 minute conversation where we design a kitchen together on a call? And
I'm actually in the process of doing that.
Oh, are you right now?
I'm going to. Yeah. I'm really curious.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a really powerful use case, right? Where historically we've looked at these costs and said they're just costs. We need to, once we've solved the demand and moved it to self-service, we get rid of the work and we're happy. Actually, there's so much more potential and opportunities for these resources. A lot of what the humans have been doing in the call center for the last 30 years is copying and pasting between two different systems to fix a problem that should have been a system integration challenge, right? They're human glue, they're copy and paste machines to get things talking. Literally, they are the two systems are not joined together. They're the people who make them together. Yeah, yes. And so, when you look at the potential here, and if you look at someone like Celonis who does process mining, and you look at some of the call transcriptions you see with like the Whisper model now, where like 96% accuracy on transcribing words in a call, you can boil all this data up and show them the intelligence in the business and say, here's the 3 things you can fix that take 10% of the work away. And all the conversations I've had have been, okay, we're not going to book that 10% to the bottom line. We've actually got so much more work we need to do. Let's go and find ways to make that valuable. And I think that's the big opportunity here, is that most of these large enterprises have historically not done the workloads they want to do because they've had so much inbound demand because of failure, because of problems in other areas of the business, that they've been focusing purely on the cost center of the failure demand. And this is an opportunity now for us to fix some of those historical failures And that gives us a great opportunity, I think, in the next 3 to 5 years of, these transformation programs are all kicking off. We're seeing lots and lots of people talking about, BCG said that 20% of its revenue will come from AI work. I think Accenture has said they're already at $2 billion run rate on AI projects. I think we're getting to the world now where people say the call center is a primary opportunity for deploying some of these AIs and learn with them, and then we can probably have a conversation about where we put it in marketing and where we put it in finance and HR and other areas. But actually, the most tangible, real term impact is my call center, where I can definitely learn and have that playground, right? The business playground, which is I see what the call center is doing really well, and then I learn that for the rest of the business.
Having said that, do you see happening, especially when we talk about latency, that you get some sort of, and maybe it does exist already, or maybe it doesn't exist, and we should definitely not want it. I think compliance is often a problem, especially in highly regulated businesses like energy and power and financial services. I think it's the same in the UK
Yes.
as in the rest of Europe. So these are highly regulated environments where either people need to have diplomas or are bound by certain rules. We know it's very hard if you're commercial. It's very hard to stick by those rules because it's a thin line. Do you envision or don't envision a situation where you have like real time AI compliance software, something that listens in and I wouldn't say filters or correct, but addresses the agent. So like, listen, you just said something, you need to correct this. So in the recording of the conversation, it is already corrected, then legally you're okay. Okay, I made a mistake. And during the conversation, he gets feedback on the call, what to change and what to change to. And I understand the feelings, understanding the feelings of the customer, what mindset is he in because of the words he or she is using. That is fine. That is already happening. I know. But this is a next level because you need to interpret, put it against rules, and give him the right direction or answers. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, so I think for those who don't spend a lot of time in the call center, most call centers have this quality monitoring department, and they listen to 5 calls for each agent per month. They go through a form and they tick the form left and right. Yes, they did that. No, they didn't do that. And then you sit down and tell the agent you failed on these 2 calls. And historically, really bad. Really, you've been naughty. You've done these 2 things wrong.
It's the KPI.
The KPI, yeah, and you don't want those compliance because that has performance impact, has bonus impact. It's really, really so. The powerful thing about this transcription technology now is you can automate that form, right? You don't need a person to do the checks on the post call, so you now go from 5 calls a month to 100% of all calls being checked. And that means that the role of the quality department changes from being the cop, the policeman saying yes or no, to actually going and coaching people and saying, here's where you're not good, here's where you need to improve, and here's how I'm going to help you improve. And we were talking with the other day with a big bank who's going to do what they call synthetic customer, which is you in your training room you will have real voice customers. They're not real, they're synthetic, they're made up customers, and you can practice these calls. And before you do a real call, like if an angry customer arrives, and a new agent can get very flustered very quickly. You've never dealt with a screaming customer before who's very angry and asks you for everything, and now you can go into a training room and practice that call, and that really helps. The competency of the agent's much higher. They know how to handle that issue when it happens.
It's like a simulator.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly that. So and it's much more real because the customer's talking in the business language. They're using the same words. They're talking about so you're going to get a lot better training and hiring. And one of the things we recommend is doing some of those synthetic customer calls in the interviewing process, because wouldn't it be great to know if the agent you're hiring, the salesperson you're hiring, could do those things? So why not put them on a 10-minute test call? How do they react to an angry customer? How do they react to a really a sales opportunity? I think that's going to really, really help. And call centers have this huge problem with attrition where 50% of people leave every year. So every 2 years, the whole call center is new people. This is going to massively change the one, the mundane work's going to go away. So it won't be so boring a job. But two, you can actually filter out people who do not want to work in this type of environment, because you can use synthetic customers to see if they would like this kind of work. And then, so when you get to the real time coaching part, and we're not there yet. I think some people have started some little things. So I've seen some sort of checklists. So have you done data protection? And as you're talking, it ticks the box because it's heard you use the words like, "Can I verify your email? Can I verify your postal address?" It's done those little checks. So that thing's already in reality. The nuance bit where, as you say, the grey line of selling versus listening, those kind of things are going to be a little bit harder. But I think what the power of all calls being monitored is that you can get to a point where the team leader is now not sitting down and saying, "Here's your two failed forms." They can actually sit down and say, "Here's where you were really good. This is what you're doing really well." But versus your peers, these are what the tactics that they use to calm a customer. And here's how I coach you into becoming a better person at doing these things, and go and practice them with simulated customers, so that you next time you get a very angry customer, you know how to solve it. So I think there's a huge opportunity here. I think we will get to the real time coach, as you said in the call, right? That will come eventually. There is there's a lot of, I mean, what we call prompt engineering today, which is, can I give the model enough input to try and make it contained? We're not there yet, right? On it really understanding the nuance of everything that's being spoken about in the conversation. But I definitely can see that coming, where you get to a point where the bot might flag, "You've just said something that's out of compliance. Please correct yourself," and go back and restate what you should have stated. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I also see happening, if he doesn't do that within a certain time frame in the
Yeah.
conversation, that the manager gets a heads up. It's like
Yeah.
the agent number 2 is in a conversation. He didn't correct himself yet. Please,
Yeah.
give it some attention, because otherwise your call is not compliant. Blah blah blah.
And we see this, and obviously this is this feels very much like Big Brother, and there's a lot of
Well, well, yes and no. Hold on. You said feels like Big Brother. Take one step back. If you train people well and hire people well, that's actually a very good point you made in the beginning. Then you shouldn't be needing it. Then you should have this green light the whole
yeah.
time. If someone makes a mistake, it's not a problem. It's nothing, no big issue. But for instance, financial services, there's this thin line between informing and advising.
Yes.
It's a very thin line. It's very complicated. It's very hard. And the customers will lure you into, but what would you do?
What would you do with my money? Yes.
Oh, that's the most horrible question. It's like, yeah, well, I can't tell you. It's not relevant what I think. It's what's relevant, what's good for you. So that thin line is very complicated. And you could get like a warning. It's like, okay, the customer is trying to lure you into that. Please be aware. And these are the lines you could say. The company policy is like, okay, sir, I can't give you any advice. Just make a statement. So it's firmly recorded that you do not give advice, you don't want to give advice, and that the customer is pushing you. It's not always on the agent. A lot of times it is also on the clients. I mean, it's not, it's very easy to put everything on the agent. So I don't see it as Big Brother. I literally see it as a great way to support an agent to operate in these extremely complex arenas, with rules and regulations that are so complex and widespread, with also the knowledge that they need to have is sometimes so complex or contradictory that they need help to be better agents. So it's actually enhancing them rather than checking on them, controlling them, by giving them the feeling they can do their work securely. And yeah, if they fuck up, of course they, excuse my language, but they have to deal with a manager, because there's a compliance risk involved. I mean, if you do it on paper, you write a letter that is wrong, same problem.
I agree. Yeah. And there's a lot of culture to be built into an organization that helps frame that messaging, that this is what it's for and this is what it's not for. And we've seen this in many times in the call center industry. So we had adherence to schedule, so whereby every minute of the day was tracked for an agent, and they were told whether they were adhering to the time or not adhering to the time, right? And so there's a lot of tools in the call center that historically have come in from a cost perspective of managing more time efficiently. And the messaging here has to be, as you just said, around this is a superpower for you. This is an enabler for you to do even more.
Voila.
And therefore, getting that positioning right up front, and management teams need to be up front about this. They can't silently add call listening and then slowly say, "Oh, actually, we've been listening to the calls, and we've realised there's a lot of opportunity." Really upfront and out there, and saying, "This is what we're going to do. We're going to give you AI superpowers, and we're going to bring you into the process of building these things." The people who are best at telling you what they need are the agents. They'll when you sit with them for an hour and listen to calls, in between the calls they'll tell you what's broken. This system is broken here and it doesn't talk to this system, and that's why and they know exactly where the problems are. And so you can really leverage the power of your tenured agents into this is really investment in you to make you better at delivering, and the position that way can be really, really powerful.
That's exactly what I think, and I think of course there will be people that don't like that.
Yeah.
Well, then I would say tough luck, because we're changing in that direction. Because the other side of that is actually the customer experience.
Yeah.
Because if the advisors or the agents are better supported and not having to do 20 systems, they have more time to address the client. And I recently talked to a company. They fully let go of the time to adhere to in a conversation for a certain topic. They said, you know what? You're now being supported by AI. So you have all the information readily available. Take any time you need to support this customer. And they had a really good chatbot, I have to admit, in order for customers to do stuff themselves. And that allowed them to do that. And they stopped having KPIs on how long a call should be. You know what? Customer satisfaction went through the roof. And employee satisfaction, same direction.
Every workforce planning manager is probably having a heart attack at the idea of getting rid of AHT targets. The power here comes from thinking about metrics slightly differently. So what is my first call resolution? It's okay having a really short handling time, but if it means you've got 2 repeat calls, you've actually saved no time. You've actually created more work, right? So a lot of people need to step back and think about, they were managing AHT because it was the only proxy they had for good use of time. Well, actually, if you look into a call, I mean, recently we did this with a client, and 25% of time was silent on the call. And what that silence time was, an agent trying to find the knowledge, trying to get the systems to do something for them. And so, they did hit their AHT target, but the handling time was actually silent time, while they were trying to move things around on the system to make things happen, right? So, you've really got to rethink what you mean when you say AHT, and you kind of think, as you said, that's not a good measure for success. Resolution time is a good measure for success. So the customer had a problem. How fast did we resolve it? It's great. Measuring specifically.
And there's something to that. Sorry to interrupt you. And resolution time. There is resolution time, the absolute amount of time you needed. Let's say you needed a minute. But the perception of the customer, and that one is actually much more important, because if the perception is, this customer, even if it took 3 minutes, that was fast, it took only 3 minutes of my time.
Yeah.
Then you need to understand, okay, so trying to do it, optimize it in 1 minute makes no difference in the quality perception of the customer. So the amount of money you need to spend to get there, sometimes it's not even worth it. So my in between line would be, don't forget to talk and listen to the customer, and what he thinks and feels.
I actually will tell an anecdote here. We did this with a bank many years ago. They were trying to answer all calls within 20 seconds. They thought that answering the call really quickly was so important. And we did a bit of work to slow down the speed of answer. We got actually out to like 5 minutes and varied it, and we're using different messages in the IVR. So things like please ensure you have your card number to hand, and please ensure you've got this and this and this. And actually, customers who waited over 60 seconds and up to 90 seconds had better satisfaction scores than customers who were answered in 20 seconds, because they felt it was too quick. They clicked the button and suddenly someone was there, hi Darren, and straight into, and then they hadn't got the pieces of paper to hand. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't have. They needed that breathe to say, right, what are all my documents I need before I can have this call? And so people are obsessed with like seconds, measuring everything in seconds, and they often forget from the customer's perspective. They just want the resolution. They really want a really good resolution. And if it takes 90 seconds to get a really well-trained agent who knows exactly what they're doing, and you've prepped them in advance, you need this document, and then we can resolve your issue, that resolution time feels so much better to a customer than just answering every call with an agent who's not as well skilled within 20 seconds, and then creating a lot of friction on the phone while you go off and find the documents needed to actually resolve the issue.
It's funny you should mention this example. Many years ago, I did a project for a customer, and they had their customer contact center manager won a prize for managing the call center really well, and having nobody had to wait longer than, I don't know, X amount of seconds before the call was picked up, etc., etc. All numbers. And yet, then they got to the customer satisfaction, and it was really, really low, and it didn't match up with the handling times and the speed at which they were handed over to the right agent. Now, what happened was the manager instructed all the people, you have to pick up the phone as quickly as possible and transfer it to another department as quick as possible. And what they didn't tell is that they had another waiting line for the other departments.
Yes.
and they only measured the first one. So there was tons of customers waiting to be handled by the expert, and many times the wrong one. But as long as because they were rewarded based on the speed at which they transferred it to the next one. So there was no waiting line.
Yeah.
The handling time was really short, et cetera, but the customer satisfaction was down the drain.
And this is the really 70%. This is the 70% of work. We get really excited about the algorithms and the tech, and pause and say, if I had all this tech, what would I do differently in my operating model? How can I get that expert to be the first person to answer the phone call? Like, I really can rethink the way I operate. And that's where it really unlocks significant value for call centers, is, not thinking that piloting a load of tech is going to solve all the problems. There's a lot of big questions to rethink once you've played playground and you've had that playground fun. It's really about, what is the right way to run this business going forward.
You're talking about first time right processes.
Yeah.
And then basically that's where the gain is. Another thing that, in terms of new tech, which I see passing by, and it's getting better and better, we see these examples of outbound sales calls or other calls. And I had already a while ago French company in my podcast that had outbound voice calls by generated. And this one specifically was for confirming doctor's appointments. They had a client, and they had a no-show rate of 25% or something. It was annoying because they had a waiting line or waiting process. So they said, what if we call everybody? So they started to have the doctor's assistants, call all the patients, and that was impossible because they would be short on staff, and someone was sick, no calls, and boom, they were back at the same problem. So they made a voice bot, outbound, that called every customer. And if the customer said, yes, I know I have an appointment and I will come, because they only needed to train it on something.
Very constrained. Yes.
It's very, it was really, really smart. I mean, it wasn't, a big thing, but it worked like a charm. They went to 100% show. And the most important was, a lot of people said, oh, shoot, I can't tomorrow. No problem. When would you like to reschedule? I have the following options, which basically had an API connection to the schedule, to the calendar. Yeah. Worked like a charm. Really easy, and it's stable. It's simple. It's relatively simple tech. It's not high tech, but the value created was enormous, and the assistants would have attention for the patients that actually needed to be taken on call, emergencies and stuff like that, or the patients in the waiting room. And this is a small doctor's practice, but it's amazing. And then what I see happening now is this technology, what we're talking about, generative AI, in voice, and doing these sales calls or other calls. I just saw today an example coming by of 7 or 8 companies that do that now. It's expanding rapidly. How do you view that? Because we're talking about a call center or a contact center inbound. But if you create a lot of free space or in time, or like the example I gave for the telco,
Mm.
if you find the sweet spots or the customers that do need attention, I can imagine you would use part of the tech, voice tech, to call outbound, and then find out if you need to hand them over to a live agent, or actually have live agents call people just to check in. Where we did that in a company I worked for. We did that in COVID time, not to sell anything, just to see how they were, because we had spare time, and management said, "Oh, well, why don't we send people home?" I said, "No way. We're going to use that time to call people, not to sell them anything, not to just to see if they're okay, if there's anything we can do for them in not selling products, but if they need help with anything in this hard time with COVID being locked off." And we called the elderly.
Yeah.
And the interesting part was people were so amazed. They actually got a person on the phone. They could talk to someone and complain about everything and everybody. And they were, they were understanding, etc. That was the human part. But I would have imagined that if we would have an empathetic voice bot doing that, saying, okay, we're doing that. If you want a live agent, just say live agent and we'll connect you. I wouldn't be surprised. That's the next AI generated coworker next to the agent. What's your view?
So I think it's good especially in that use case you mentioned there for patient attendance. I can imagine a point where customers fight back with machine customer, and I think we saw some early attempts at this, right, where you will have a bot talking to a bot, which is my bot on my phone will answer and say, yes, Stuart is going to attend his doctor's appointment tomorrow. It's in his calendar. And
then Joe Rogan did that also.
Yeah, the outbound cold calling space is fraught with risk, because if you misconfigure and ring people too often, or you use it in use cases that's not very value adding, you can really, most people do, put the phone to silent and ignore the call. So it's got a really valuable use cases like the doctor's one you mentioned. Some of those core ones for the sales ones are really cool because they're constrained to a very specific domain. So you're actually, not going to worry about hallucination or varying off topic, too much. And if it's a great way to connect the customer into a conversation, and then once you've got them through a sort of warm qualification, then to a human to then actually do the actual sales process, I think that can be a really valuable way to improve the effectiveness of the sales agent. The tech is really there. Now we've got to make sure that the use cases are that you use it for are right.
Well, financial services, mortgage advice. Let's go back to that one again. I mean, there is so much information, and before you said the challenge is getting the data in the right spot,
in the
right?
Place,
the right data in the right spot. Okay, so let's assume, and it's not out there yet. I would love to see it. Let's assume you want mortgage advice. Okay, and there's some stuff not clear. If you send all your documents beforehand, so you get a list, you send all the documents, you can analyze these documents because you need certain values that's standardized. So it's relatively easy to do. So you take out all the information, and some of it is contradictory. And you do an outbound call by an AI generated voice about this data. And you can say, it's not scripted, but it needs to understand it. You need to answer, and we'll gather your answers and we'll see if that's good enough. As a preparation for the actual talk with the advisor, the amount of time the advisor would save going through all the data, analyzing it, finding the contradictories, and having to go back 5 times to answer a question. So I would imagine you would have all these documents, get all the data, listen, sir, I saw that this document is missing. Please send it, blah, blah, blah. I'll also send you an email. And could you clarify this and this and this? And it knows everything about that topic because, you've trained it on that. I imagine that would be so valuable. And you could actually schedule the call when, you get a WhatsApp message. We need to call you. Our bot needs to call you to go over a couple of details. When would it be suitable for you? And it doesn't matter what time, 1 in the morning. Fine, please.
Yeah, as someone who's just been through that very painful process,
it's horrible.
Would be highly beneficial if on both sides, right? That everyone was aware of all the documents that were needed and was aware of a thing. And I think, you know, digitization for digitization's sake
Nah,
happened
get
in the
away.
last wave, and we basically, you know, made a self-service mortgage journey that was completely, you know, no touch. But it's such a valuable moment in your life. I mean, it's the biggest transaction for most people ever. Um, you, you you need to be very thoughtful on what points is this right to deploy. As you said, the document gathering one is a great one, right? Have a conversation. These are the three documents you're missing, and this document you've uploaded is missing, or this, or you need to clarify this. You know, that's a very powerful point to a customer journey. And what a lot of people don't do is step back and think about that end-to-end customer journey and even the life cycle. So, you know, I'm getting a mortgage today, but, you know, my renewal point is in 2 years' time. What's the renewal conversation? You know, think about what are the interventions, where are the steps in there, and then the same for the employee experience. You talked about that financial advisor. You know, can the bot say to the advisor, these are the things I've got, these are the points the customer didn't understand, you need to go into these, you know, you need to really bring those details to life for them, right? And that's where we can get, you know, I think really, especially for these high value, high touch use cases, um the brands that do this will I think thrive versus those who put the burden back onto the human beings and say it's all throw labor at the problem and hope for the best.
And you get more frustrated with the whole process, which is really annoying. And it's one big cover your back.
Yes, everyone's covering their back and not telling you what you need to do to get through the whole journey.
Whereas if you cut to the chase and leave all the compliance stuff out, it's not that hard. It's
Yeah,
actually quite simple. But no, we agree. It's been overregulated, and all the companies, mortgage companies, are in and governments are in panic mode, and that means we make more rules and more stuff where you have to comply, and all the advisors, they just do it because otherwise they can't sell you or advise you a mortgage.
we can
So
make it. We can use machines to help in this regard and make these things easier for both parties and simpler and still compliant.
I was going to say, and still compliant. If you if you would be able, you are able to look 5 years ahead, and I'm not even going to try 10 years, but what does a typical contact center of an average sized company will look like if they are aware of new technology? What will we see?
Um, for today's workloads, the call center will be smaller, um, and it will be staffed by experts. There will not be a um, this sort of, as we talked about before, the front line of generalist who has to transfer you to the right spot. We can really simplify the structure of the call center to get you to the expert that you need at the right moment in time. And therefore, a lot of what the time is spent on um, today is basically trying to get through the task. So you've rang for an issue, I resolve that issue, and then I hope you don't call back, and then I go into the same issue with a different customer. I think that what we need to get to a world is that expert, when they've dealt with that issue, is able to think about what went wrong that caused the contact to come in. Who else in my cohort of customers is affected by the same issue? How can I then, as an expert, inform those other customers that they've got the same problem? How can I help the machines, train the machines to solve some more of those issues? So I take a software defect as a great example. You know, if I've just noticed a bug with my one client's software and we've just spent an hour doing a support call fixing that one software bug for you, that expert should then go off the phone and spend time finding out all the other customers who've got that software bug and writing to all of them and saying, this is the software bug, this is how you resolve the issue. And then I'm going to give that knowledge article to the bot, which is then going to mean that next time a customer comes into the bot and asks a question about this error code, the bot understands what that bug is and is able to also then deflect loads of demand. So it's a smaller call center staffed with people focused on change and improvement, not just doing lots of one and done activity. You know, the throughput of a call center agent today, 30 to 40 calls, and they rely on their managers and their support staff to try and fix the upstream issues. I think in the future, the frontline are the experts, and they are training the systems that are resolving issues, and they're the ones empowered to fix the business. They will go and have conversations with product people, with support people, with IT staff, and fix the problems that are driving in demand. And because it'll be a smaller organization than today's very, very big, broad generalist pool, these people will be higher skilled people, and will do a lot more impactful work. The 30 calls per day might go to 1,000 calls a day, because they're preventing so much work. They're able to empower the bot to resolve so much more. We're really supercharging what one person can do as throughput in a day.
But you're changing the paradigm even more, because as we said in the beginning, you're changing the paradigm that a contact center is going from reactive
Yeah.
To proactive. So based on input, we create output ahead of your call. And that actually creates satisfied customers. It's annoying that there's a bug, but hey, I know about it. I can fix it before it becomes a problem. So
yeah, and it's a very big mindset shift, because we have been so reactive as an industry. And we talked about, the hiding the phone number, putting all these forms in front of customer support. I think this is an opportunity now to say, we can fix the basics that have been bugging our with using these technologies to fix the basics. But then once we've done the low hanging fruit, now is the time to rethink the role of the call center. And actually, it should be much more strategic. It should be much more center of the organization. Product teams won't tell you that they've got 20 defects in the backlog. That the call center does know that. They know all the information. They can be really powerful for management and say, this is the issue. This is what's driving customer dissatisfaction. They really know where all the things are buried, because they face it every day. They know it every day. They feel the burden of all that work that falls out onto them.
that is sounds like it's going to be a fun couple of years. The next years where we think these are huge transformations in all aspects.
Very big, and I think we risk people getting very excited by the algorithms and piloting lots of stuff, and then in 2 or 3 years' time, when the CFO comes around and says, "Where's the ROI?" and the conversation says, "Well, we've got 10 great pilots, we've never much really done anything." So I think there's a lot of rethinking the role, and then using that to then make meaningful investments, and being able to be clear to the CFO up front that this is a big investment, this is a big transformational program in the business, but it will deliver ROI, it will deliver a return, because done in the right way, those playground ideas right now can really transform the customer experience in the next few years.
It's a bit like the theory of constraint approach, where a lot of companies, okay, let's put AI here in the middle of the process.
Yeah.
But if you don't change everything around it, it's exactly what you're saying, if I'm translating correctly.
Yeah.
Then you have a local optimum, but it doesn't do squat for the whole process. So if you don't change the whole process, the throughput time is still the same. Just here it goes a little bit faster.
Yeah.
So that's what I hear you saying.
100%.
And if that's correct, then that is a big push to properly strategize. I always say that you should properly strategize. Hey, why are you doing it? Are you willing to commit for a couple of years? Are you willing to commit to the team, to give them freedom to experiment and make choices? And the choice implies change, a lot of change. And if you're not prepared to do that, then nothing's going to happen.
A lot of change.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you could give an advice or tips sounds so cheesy, but advice to companies with contact centers, big or small, thinking about, okay, we need a chatbot, or we need a chatbot with generative AI, or we need generative AI to support our workers. What would your advice be to C-level executives and people in the operation? Those are two separate things, I understand.
Yeah.
And how to start, where to start, and what steps to take. And I understand getting good advice from the outside from people who know, that's one of them. But that makes perfect sense, because the experts are all outside. I mean, they couldn't afford all these experts, so it's cheaper to hire them as a consultant. Not selling consultancy, but I understand that, and I value that.
Yeah, so I think for the C-suite, this is a don't get excited by the demo. The application of this in your organization revolves rethinking IT architecture, redoing knowledge management, redoing process, redoing customer journeys. Build the internal capability to do this. This is not about having you need the internal capability to own that process, own that data migration, own the sort of outcome of this, what will be a 3-year program of work to transform. And for the operational leaders, deploying a very simple chatbot on your website that answers FAQs has been possible for the last 10 years. We've programmed if this then that rules and logic into chatbots for a very long time. With generative AI, it's very different. You need to think about how you've structured your knowledge, where your data resides, and you need to rewrite the knowledge. And it's a very big uphill task to rewrite those foundational documents that are your business process. And then when you've done that, there's a real opportunity to rebuild the business. Right? Some of the things that you used to do, you don't need to do in the future. Some of the things you didn't do, but you really wanted to do, you can now do. So now take the step back opportunity to think about that journey that you're going to go on, and design the journey in such a way that will deliver for a 3-year goal, not for a 12-month goal, to reduce costs. So, you can quickly put some FAQs and contain some demand on your website. Everyone can do that. But in 12 months' time, you'll have run out of FAQs to put on the website. And the demand that remains is the very difficult transactional demand. I want to solve that my broadband is out, or I want to renew my contract. That involves calling lots of legacy systems. That involves really thinking about complicated business processes. And you need to be thinking about what do I need to invest in to make those kind of journeys happen online. Because when you go on this journey, you can fund this very quickly with some short wins, but it will not deliver that transformational outcome that you're looking for in 3 years' time.
Those are very good advice, especially the one with rewriting the content. That's one of the things a lot of companies forget. Garbage in is garbage out. So
yes.
And if you use AI to write your content and then have AI, something goes south.
Yes. I mean,
so
yeah.
You recognize this?
Oh yeah. There's it's so exciting. I mean, now I'm playing with like 6 to 7 different tools each week that do all this stuff. But then when you think about the level of quality control that you're going to have to go through, and the level of rigor that's needed to actually make this in production, like really different orders of magnitude of work that's required to make this stuff stick.
And that brings us back to the point of maybe not all the same jobs, but a lot of new jobs.
New jobs, and for at least the foreseeable future, the next 5 years, a very big opportunity for those who want to redefine their customer experience. Really elevate the role of the contact center people who've probably historically felt like they were out on a limb from the core organization, and they heard all the problems, but they had no power over controlling those problems and fixing them. And now the tools and the investment case is present to go and do this. And so I think it's a great opportunity for the next 5 years for these people to really, step change their own career in delivering this transformation.
Well, I'm looking forward to witnessing it, and I'm looking forward to the first outbound call by an AI calling me, and me trying to get it to break it,
to break the
of course.
On it. Yes,
that's the fun part. Thank you very much, Stuart. This was very interesting, and I learned a lot. And thank you very much, and good luck on your endeavors. And if you run into something really interesting, you say, "Oh, this is amazing," give me a call, and we'll record another one to share that with the audience.
Thanks so much for the time, Geronimo. It's been brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.